As temperatures rise, so does the need to stay cool. So in this video, we're going to cover some tips to keep your AC blowing cold all summer. So y'all stick around. So in this video, I'm going to share 5 tips keeping your AC blowing cold all summer long. But first, let's take it one step further and talk about how AC systems work. All AC systems are based on 3 fundamental laws of nature: heat flow, heat absorption, pressure, and boiling points. So when talking about heat flow, an AC system is designed to pump heat from one point to another. Heat always transfers from a warmer object to a cooler object. The second principle is heat absorption. Objects can be in one of 3 forms: solid, liquid, or gas. When objects change from one form to another, large amounts of heat can be transferred. The third principle is pressure and boiling points. Pressure on a substance, such as a liquid, changes its boiling point. The greater the pressure, the higher the boiling point. If pressure is placed on a vapor, it condenses at a higher temperature. As pressure on a substance is reduced, the boiling point is also reduced. An AC system is a closed, pressurized system that consists of an AC compressor, condenser, and depending on the type of system that your vehicle uses, it can either have a receiver dryer and expansion valve, or it'll have an orifice tube and accumulator. Have the evaporator. So let's talk about the difference between the accumulator and orifice tube versus the receiver dryer and expansion valve. So an orifice tube is basically a fixed orifice that expands the refrigerant, but it's unable to regulate the flow rate. The accumulator protects the system. It is located on the low pressure side of the system between the evaporator outlet and the AC compressor. It provides compressor protection, preventing compressor damage due to liquid slugging. It retains moisture and contaminants from the system. It ensures oil return and ensures that only refrigerant is returning to the compressor. In a receiver dryer expansion valve system, it is located between the condenser outlet and the expansion valve inlet on the high pressure side of the AC system. A receiver dryer is used on AC systems that have a thermal expansion valve. It is responsible for separating gas from liquid refrigerant. A thermal expansion valve is a component in the AC system that controls the amount of refrigerant released into the evaporator. It also regulates the superheat of the refrigerant that flows out of the evaporator to a steady value. In other words, it removes pressure from the liquid refrigerant and allows expansion or change of state from a liquid to a vapor in the evaporator. So in the AC system, heat is absorbed and transferred in the following order. In this example, we're going to be talking about a system that uses a receiver dryer and an expansion valve. So once the AC system is turned on, the compressor starts pumping. The refrigerant leaves the compressor as a high pressure, high temperature vapor on its way to the condenser. By removing the heat via the condenser, the vapor becomes a high pressure, lower temperature liquid. Moisture and contaminants are removed by the receiver dryer, and the refrigerant is stored until needed. The expansion valve removes high pressure from the liquid refrigerant to allow expansion or change of state from a liquid to a vapor in the evaporator. Under a greatly reduced pressure, the liquid refrigerant is at its coldest as it leaves the expansion valves and enters the evaporator. Heat is then absorbed from the air inside the vehicle's passenger compartment by the low pressure, low temperature refrigerant, causing the liquid to vaporize inside the evaporator. The result is cold air from your air vents. The refrigerant returns to the compressor as a low pressure, higher temperature vapor. With this basic knowledge of how an AC system works, this leads us to the topic of today's video: 5 tips to keeping your AC blowing cold all summer long. Tip number 1 is check your cabin air filter. This filter is located behind the glove box, usually underneath the dash. A lot of times this filter gets neglected, mostly because either people don't know about it or they forget about it. When this filter gets dirty, it restricts airflow to the vents, reducing the cooler air that is available to keep you cool. Number 2, the cooling fans. Cooling fans are located under the hood at the front of the vehicle. During periods of low speeds or idling, the cooling fans provide the necessary airflow through the condenser. In order for your AC system to operate properly, the cooling fans must be operational and capable of moving air through the condenser and the radiator. Low airflow results in poor AC cooling at low speeds, and in the long term, it can damage your AC compressor. Tip number 3, the air passages through the condenser. The air passages of the condenser must be clean and free of debris. Many things can restrict airflow through the condenser, such as grass clippings, leaves, dirt, and sometimes even trash that's collected from the roadways, such as trash bag, plastic, anything that can get up there and restrict airflow. Quick visual check. You can just get up in there and see, are the passages clean? Is there grass, dirt? If it is dirty, they can be removed with a brush and water hose. Tip number 4 is check your AC belt. The compressor is belt driven, so it's very important that the belt is in proper working condition. A belt that slips or is loose will not allow the compressor to work properly. This will result in poor AC performance. Normally when a belt slips, you can hear it squealing. You can do a visual check the condition of the belt. If it's determined that it's stretched or damaged, you must replace the belt. Tip number 5, checking for proper refrigerant levels. Most often, low refrigerant levels are the number 1 cause of improper cooling of your AC system. Most of the time, low refrigerant levels will cause the AC compressor to cycle on and off rapidly, or could even prevent the compressor from coming on at all. AC systems are equipped with a low pressure switch and a high pressure switch to prevent damage to the AC system. The best way to check operation of your AC system is with a manifold gauge set. For a properly operating system, the low pressure should read somewhere around 25 psi to 55 psi. The high side should be around 150 psi to 325 psi. These readings are going to depend largely on the ambient air temperature, which is the outside atmospheric temperature. R134A refrigerant. The static pressure is generally the same as the outside air temperature. For example, if you were to measure the AC pressure in a non-running system with the compressor off, with the outside temperature of 90 degrees Fahrenheit, then the AC system would have a static pressure at or near 90 psi. A 134A pressure gauge chart has been created. This chart will give you an estimated high and low side pressure for the given ambient air temperature. For example, on a 95 degree Fahrenheit day, the low side pressure would be around 50 to 55 psi, with the high side pressure around 275 to 300 psi. Always remember when checking your high and low side pressures, you want to do it with the compressor running. So always verify with the front of the compressor to make sure it engages and is operating properly. If the compressor is not running, then your numbers are not going to be accurate. Hopefully you enjoyed this video and found it useful. If so, please consider subscribing and hit that like button. Thank you for watching. See you next time.